That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright, yeah guys, I know the background behind us is entirely messed up. I'm trying to get it fixed. I've been spending pretty much the last hour trying to hang up that jersey. It just will not work. I don't know why, but please try to ignore that. And let's focus in on 5 wide receivers that I think we need to be going out and aggressively trading for. We're actually going to go through and rank these as our trade targets. We'll go from 5 to 1. And I want to remind everyone, guys, I am going to be covering at least one player that was on our wide receiver falling fast video. Now, yes, because he was falling fast, you are actually going to be able to trade for him at a lot lower of a price than you would have previously. That video was just identifying the players who lost value coming into this week. This video is looking at the entire fantasy football landscape and trying to determine what players have seen their value fall past where their future production is going to go. So keep in mind, guys, everything that we're doing here is trying to track this value and trying to look at players where we think it makes a ton of sense to go out there and pay for them at that current value. Okay, so that's it. Let's get into this video. And our number 5 trade target for the wide receiver position is actually going to be Amari Cooper. Now with Amari Cooper, I have him here down at 5 just because we know that based on the talent of this wide receiver, based on the production that we've seen him have now with multiple quarterbacks in Dallas, I think that he's actually one of the safer wide receivers for the rest of the season. I know a lot of people want to look at that Andy Dalton start a few weeks ago against Washington, say that Andy Dalton is not going to come back in. Andy Dalton is not going to be able to provide Dallas with a little bit better quarterback play. And I'm here saying, guys, just try to take a step back. Instead of just looking at one matchup where we had a horrendous Dallas Cowboys offensive line going up against one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL in Washington, don't only look at that start from Andy Dalton and try to determine what you believe Dalton is based on that one thing. We have like a 5 or 6 year sample of Andy Dalton in Cincinnati, actually longer than that, with him providing, I would say, about mediocre quarterback play. Obviously, this was someone that was never able to lead the Cincinnati Bengals to any great success, but at the end of the day, he was able to provide a lot of fantasy production for other weapons in that offense. Now, coming off a performance with what I believe to be a worse quarterback against an elite defensive unit, we actually saw Amari Cooper have over 70 yards and 5 receptions. Yes, he did not go out there and score a touchdown, so at the end of his day, his fantasy stats are not necessarily near the top of the leaderboards, but we know that those touchdowns are going to be volatile week to week. I think that the narrative around Dallas at this point may have gone a little bit too far just looking at this Dallas Cowboys offensive line, really being able to just surprise a lot of people with what they were able to do against an elite Pittsburgh Steelers unit. Now, I think going forward, we are going to be expecting Amari Cooper to be a mid to high-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. And if you hang out during the live streams, we live stream every single night. You know, the majority of people in the fantasy football community have kind of completely written off Amari Cooper at this point, saying that he's a wide receiver that they don't want anywhere near their starting lineup. And I think coming out of bye, going into week 11, maybe Amari Cooper would be someone that I would be happy to have in my flex spot. Okay, so now let's get to our 4th ranked wide receiver trade target, and this is going to be Chris Godwin. So yeah, guys, Chris Godwin made our wide receiver falling fast video earlier today, but that was based on the fact that this Tampa Bay and New Orleans game got completely out of hand. We did not see anything from this game that I think we can safely project going forward, outside the fact that we actually saw Chris Godwin run a significant amount of his routes from the slot, and we actually saw Antonio Brown and Mike Evans really used on the boundaries. Now, what this tells me is I think that we are actually going to end up seeing Antonio Brown kind of cannibalize a little bit more of that Mike Evans target share than he's going to do with Chris Godwin. On top of that, we know that this offense should be in a massive bounce back spot. They just extremely struggled at the very beginning of the season against the New Orleans Saints yet again. Now, I think going up against the Carolina Panthers in Week 10, this is going to be a big bounce back spot for Chris Godwin, for Tom Brady, and I think Godwin may actually be the safest wide receiver out of everybody on Tampa Bay. And I want to acknowledge that some people are calling him injury prone. Guys, that's not true. If you look at his injuries that he suffered so far in 2020, it looks like they have been mainly unrelated. And on top of that, if you look at dating all the way back to 2017, when Chris Godwin was drafted into the NFL, he has rarely ever been on the injury report for practice, rarely ever been even limited in practice. This is someone throughout his entire NFL career. We have not had to worry about injuries. I think what we've seen so far in 2020 has been a little bit random. Just like I said with Andy Dalton, guys, please do not hyper-focus on the small sample. Take a step back and look at the player through what they've done through their entire NFL career. This is the mistake that we made with Corey Davis, saying that he was a must-start player in Week 9, where I really hyper-focused in on that 2-week sample just because I really wanted Corey Davis to be a thing. We ignored his previous career production. No, guys, we have to take a step back. We can't hyper-focus in on what we saw the past week. I think Chris Godwin is not injury-prone. Chris Godwin's going to be in a situation where he's definitely going to be a massive bounce-back player. Okay, so now our number 3 trade target. This is going to be someone that's made our buy low video for pretty much the past month, Michael Thomas. I know y'all are so tired about hearing about Michael Thomas, but I want to say here, I did not think I was going to have to talk about him until during the live streams. I got continuous questions about Michael Thomas and his evaluation, and it sounded like a lot of people had him as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. And guys, that's not the case. When Michael Thomas is going to be healthy, we are going to have Michael Thomas projected as a top 5 wide receiver. I think on this last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there are a couple things that we can look at this Michael Thomas production and just understanding that the variables were so shifty. So if we look at just the overall game script in that game, obviously we are not going to be expecting the New Orleans Saints to be able to get to that early of a lead at the very beginning of every single game they play. That is completely random. That is not going to happen again. I don't think we have to worry about that game script again. And on the second hand, we have to understand that this was Michael Thomas's first week back in action. So as soon as that game got out of hand, there was no reason for them to have Michael Thomas on the field, be throwing the ball to Michael Thomas, just because this is a team that is trying to push for the playoffs. Once they already had that win locked up, there's no reason to risk an injury to one of their significant contributors if it's not going to help them get to the fantasy, I'm sorry, not the fantasy football playoffs, just the regular playoffs. Okay, so now our number 2 trade target. This is not going to be a wide receiver, but I have to include him in here. Is actually going to be a tight end, and this is going to be Mark Andrews. So I know this is a little weird just because it's a tight end in the wide receiver video. Just we don't have enough tight end trade targets to make a tight end video, so we're going to have to throw him in here. And guys, with Mark Andrews, I know he's been so volatile so far in 2020. He's provided multiple spike weeks with over 20 fantasy points. And on the other hand, he's provided multiple dud weeks, like what we just saw, 3 receptions for 22 yards. But what has stayed consistent is that Mark Andrews is near the top of the NFL in terms of the percent of his team's targets that he's seeing, in terms of what we've seen from his career efficiency so far. And coming off of back-to-back very tough performances, I think that Mark Andrews is actually going to be a player that we can expect to progress going forward. I mean, think 2 weeks ago, he had to go up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was the second best defense against the tight end position. Now, this last week, he had to go up against an elite Indianapolis Colts unit. We know that their linebackers have just dangerous athleticism where it is almost impossible for tight ends to go up against that Indianapolis Colts team. Yes, Mark Andrews did not provide you any type of production whatsoever, but that's why his fantasy value is drastically falling. And I think this is a tight end that we need to be making sure we're sending out trade offers for. Okay, now our last player, crazy the questions I'm getting about him in the live stream. But our number 1 trade target at the wide receiver position this week is going to be Tyler Lockett. So Tyler Lockett is coming off a performance where he did not kill your fantasy football team. He had 4 receptions, 40 yards, 7 targets. And I know a lot of people want to just look at the DK Metcalf emergence and really completely write off Tyler Lockett. But guys, DK Metcalf has been seeing that consistent target share every single week this entire year. And Tyler Lockett still has been able to provide us elite level production. I know he is going to be a little bit more volatile week to week, just because really that production is thriving with efficiency and not necessarily volume. And we know volume is going to lead to consistency. Efficiency is going to lead to some dud weeks, some spike weeks. Regardless, Tyler Lockett is actually still the wide receiver 3 in points per game in 2020. A wide receiver that's consistently coming out here and making a difference in your starting lineup, in that he can flat out win you a week every other week. And then in between that, yes, he's not necessarily going to help you win your matchup, but he's not going to lose it for you. He's going to provide you just enough to where hopefully you had a different playmaker go off where you can take it down. But guys, right now, Tyler Lockett's going to go up against the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to have DK Metcalf get shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. I think Tyler Lockett is going to be in a massive blow-up performance just because we know that Russell Wilson is going to come out and be hyper productive. And if DK Metcalf is getting shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, I think that Tyler Lockett is someone that we can expect a massive performance and for his fantasy value to return to where it was. Now, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, please make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps us out. And hopefully I'll see y'all in the live stream tonight. I stream every single night at 9 p.m. Central, except on Thursday night where we go live after the game.